All right, and welcome back to episode 14 of Chasing 69, a New York Jets podcast. Teddy, today going over our fourth installment of the Reading the Room series. Is this number 4? I believe
so, but we're not the smartest at remembering.
I'm going to say it is because we did quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. So we've got the 4th edition of our Reading the Room series. One of the final 2 that we've got. Almost wrapped this thing up, Ted. Going to go over some tight ends and defensive linemen today. Really fun conversation about both positions. Good mix of vets that are new to the team, rookies as well too. So those are both exciting. Teddy, before we get into everything today, though, make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_chasing69. Subscribe to the podcast, share it, review it.
Do all those things.
Play it a million times. Follow Teddy on Twitter.
Even if you're just going to listen for like 2 minutes real quick, like just listen again. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you just wanted to hear our voices, just listen again and then again, just like a few times.
And then unsubscribe, resubscribe. We'll steal that.
Right. That's big.
Take. That's huge. So make sure you're doing that as well too. So Teddy at Teddy Huncho on Twitter. I'm at Blake Andrew Pace. Teddy, we just had a very fun weekend together. Before we get into all the Jets stuff, how are you feeling? Is your body recovering? Because mine isn't.
Yeah, the body feels okay. I'd put it at a solid like 6.8, so like almost back, but still just a little worn down. But the mind is at like a 2. I just feel like I can't. Working today was a struggle, just getting back in after the long weekend and hanging with the boys, reuniting in our hometown. I'm tired for sure.
Yep, very exhausted. I got into Nashville last night, and despite knowing I was exhausted, I stayed up till past midnight, just doing whatever the fuck. And then you wake up and it's like, fuck, I gotta go back to work.
Self-control on our end, Blake.
Definitely. I always run into that problem. But no, feeling all right.
Feeling good now that we're talking Jets.
Exactly.
That's always good.
We're podcasting.
To even out my mind, just talk about the Jets for a while.
Exactly. We don't need to talk about analytics or what do I do? Spices and teas.
You don't know.
I kind of know what you do. You do well, you're in a big project right now with all of your shipping that you have to do. So you're under a big undercover project. I kind of know what you do. I've seen the spreadsheets, but
you've seen the spreadsheets.
I've seen the spreadsheets. Yeah. And then I talk spices and teas, which is so fun. Anywho, episode 14, Reading the Room, tight end and defensive lineman. Before we get into that, just a few housekeeping notes. And this is one we'll start off. It's been a housekeeping note for the entirety of this podcast. I'm not sure if we heard it at the same place, but I watched it in the morning and 30 minutes later you texted me about it. So I'm assuming we did. Rich Eisen had on Robert Saleh for an interview. I believe it was Monday, June 20th. If I'm wrong about that, sorry, but kind of just going over a few things and talking about, of course, tackle Mekhi Becton, who it was announced ready to play, no limits to his knee, but of course still was not available for OTAs. And it's news because all this time we've been told, he's just rehabbing his knee. The knee is officially cleared. He is ready to go and is still not out there. And so now is where the questions over conditioning and effort and health come into play. And hearing, Saleh speak about it, I think you can, once the coach comes out and is like, no, he's ready to play and we hope to have him back soon, then you're like, okay, so this is something that is a little bit more problematic than just his knee hasn't finished healing yet. So Teddy, in the latest saga, what are your thoughts on this?
It's just like you said. I mean, it's we knew that it couldn't just be the same exact injury. So them coming out and saying like, well, the knee's technically fully cleared, there's no restrictions there. I mean, that is a good thing to hear. I think it was literally last week when we were like, I just want something. Like, is he still injured? Like, what's going on? So that part was good. But then it's just the obvious, like, okay, well, he still didn't play in OTAs. Still doesn't seem to be there physically based on, what the coaches are saying, which is fine. Like, he's a bigger guy than anyone else in the league is going to be. he's got that extra weight. Like, so that is what it is. Um, but it is just like frustrating again, because it's just we don't know. Now, I mean, there's definitely, maybe you want to say like, oh, well, the Jets are holding him back because, they've put a lot in this offseason about not having their guys like strain themselves, not having their guys go above and beyond. I think Samini asked a question to Saleh the other day in his press conference just about like, oh, there hasn't been any big injuries yet. Like, what's up with that? And Saleh's like, don't jinx me. So I
Yeah,
hope this
shut
doesn't
up.
jinx them either. But they have avoided it. So I mean, I'm sure that's part of it, but at the same time, like it you hear the coaches speak and it seems like he's not ready to play and they're frustrated by it. So I don't know. It just is what it is. I mean, I've seen people go back and forth about this on Twitter, and I always land in the like, I'm not going to really be mad or upset about it until I have to be, until it comes training camp and it comes preseason and it comes week 1 and he's not out there playing. But it's shitty, man. You just want to see him play. You want to see him out there, especially when he
Right.
comes out and he's like, I'm going to make everyone eat their words. You just want to see it come to fruition.
And that's my biggest thing. My biggest takeaway at this point now is because he has been so vocal, whether it's, the t-shirts or the tweets or, the press conference comments. We've seen a ton of players in this market and, members of the Jets who, chirp a little bit with what people on the outside say. And there's a scenario where it goes great. Becton comes back and he's a statue franchise tackle that they hoped he would be. Best case scenario. And then everybody can say, hey, we were wrong. We'll shut up. Go do your thing, King. There's the other situation of this where he just continues to say, no, I'm going to prove him wrong. And then we get closer to the season and he's not ready yet. And then, okay, he's still not ready. And then maybe he gets out there and he looks a little rusty and then he has a slow start to the season. And then all of the noise is like, we worried and we spoke about it for the entire offseason and you told us not to worry. And now here we are and it's still a problem. And I don't know, there's just players in that scenario that, we've seen it time and time again. I think a guy that gets a lot of hate now, Jamal Adams, and was such a fan favorite at a certain point. But when your talk doesn't, when you talk the talk but can't walk the walk, that's when the fan base can really start to turn on you. And you just hope for Becton's sake and for everybody's sake, for the Jets' sake, this upcoming season, for the fan base, that he does shut everybody up. But we're getting closer to the start of the season and we haven't seen, outside of Saleh saying the knee is good, which is great news because that's obviously a huge concern. Aside from that, we haven't seen anything else that's like, I'm going to hold on to this and it's going to give me a lot of hope heading into the year.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. There is a lack of hope, but I will just end this Becton segment on I was watching some videos that some people took of him at OTAs, and I mean, he looks good. He looks
okay
for a big guy. He looks okay, but I would love to see him like play a little.
Yeah,
So
and we've got
best.
time. There's still what it's June 22nd by the time this comes out. God, we're almost in July, so I mean, there's not a ton of time.
But I mean, dude, that's what I love about like this whole like how the NFL is adjusted to year round, like a year round league. Because this is when this June and July are when most fans are like the most worried and when it's the most boring. And I think in terms of news and things to talk about, like even our podcast has reflected that in terms of the housekeeping every week, like not much is happening, but it's like, at least these guys are in the building, they're playing, and we're a month out, like it's not like we're far away from when things start getting really real. So yeah, I mean, you don't want to wish away the summer, but you want to wish for football season. So,
And so while one tackle is hoping to be available and ready to play, the other is looking for a new contract. And that is good old George Fant, looking for an extension. I think, when did this start circulating around a little bit more? So I believe, did he tweet himself? Or did someone else bring it up? I'm trying to remember. I should have had that written down how it started off, but it came up. He's, being looked at as a very important figure for this football team, not only just on the field, but in the locker room. The coaching staff has applauded him being a vocal leader on the team and being really just a very concrete person along the offensive line and in that offensive locker room. He wants to be paid as such. He wants a little bit of a bigger deal. And I'm sure the Jets obviously want to give him that extension because they value him so much, but it's also a tackle that has been up and down throughout his career, is up in his 30s, while it might be early 30s, still in his 30s. And you just take a look and you say, okay, well, hopefully they can find the right number. It's not, you've got players every year that are like, I'm holding out without a new deal. It doesn't seem like it's at this point. I think that's because the Jets know that they want to get a deal done. But it just seems like the conversations are ongoing around an extension for who is slotted to be the starting left tackle this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a smart move on his end. Right now he's on the last year of his deal, slotted to make $10 million almost. And you're exactly right. And like the way that the Jets view him right now, he's just such an important piece to like this whole team coming together, especially if they're going to want to go ahead and put him at left tackle. I definitely 100% think a deal is going to get done. What that looks like in terms of like years, I'm not sure, like probably a 1 or 2 year add-on extension. I mean, he's going to play his age 30 season this season. So I don't really worry about like age, if we sign him to a 2-year extension, he's 32 at the end of that contract. I think that's solid. And I also think the Jets are in a position where, we do have available money. So if Joe Douglas, works his magic, even if you're paying him a decent amount next year, if you're able to cut bait after that, that's kind of when all these rookies that we're drafting are going to hit, and we're going to start wanting to extend these guys. And you start thinking about, hopefully we're extending Zach Wilson at that time. So I definitely think where we're standing, it's clear a deal is going to get done. How much that's going to actually end up being, we'll see what Joe Douglas and his agent can work out. But I think clearly a deal is going to get done here.
Yeah. It's funny when you look at the Jets, specifically in the trenches, offensive line and defensive line. A lot of teams have like their star tackle, their star edge rusher, and then the rest of the guys are just kind of a mix. And with the Jets, it's almost like, well, their best player along the offensive line could be 2 or 3 different guys. And we'll get into that conversation with the defensive line. But when you look at Fant, you go, okay, yes, the outside of the off the field stuff almost is just as important, if not more, because you're on a good offensive line now, and he can look and almost like a little leverage point in this can be like, hey, I'm your only tackle right now that is ready and available. So back the Brinks truck up to my front yard. And it's just interesting because like, no, he's not an elite left tackle. He's not a Trent Williams. He's not, one of these great guys. But when you take a look at the team and they're, they paid Lakin this past off season, but a ton of other guys aren't really making great money. You've got 2 first rounders that have their first round salaries, but you look at it and you go, no, you're not this elite guy, but you're probably the most valuable to us. It'll be interesting to see how the money ranks between, the league's top paid versus like, I'm interested to see what the money looks like compared to what Tomlinson got.
Right.
So really interesting to see how that'll play out. I agree with you. I don't see a way in which they don't get a deal done just based on how much they talk about his importance to the team. But conversations are ongoing. Teddy, only other thing, Larry Ogunjobi, right before we recorded this podcast, signed with the Steelers. He was someone that met with the Jets maybe a month back or a few weeks back, however long ago it was. Defensive line help. He was a former, most recently with the Browns, and then he goes to his division rival here. No, Bengals.
Yeah, he's played on all 3. He's played on the Bengals, Browns, and now Steelers.
So the Ravens will be next. Okay, cool.
Yes, exactly.
So going to the Steelers, miss out on a defensive line guy. I would think, given the Jets' resources, if they could have probably matched something. I feel like if they wanted to, not to say that, they didn't want him. I'm not going to say that because they brought him in. They obviously were interested in adding him, but at the end of the day, miss out on a guy on the defensive line. I guess at one of the thinner positions of the group at interior, but were you sitting over there heartbroken that he didn't?
No. I mean, I mean, we'll get into it today, which is cool. But, even with the kind of interior D-line issues, I don't really view the D-line as somewhere where we really need to be adding anyone, especially Ogunjobi, who I feel like the production you're going to get out of him, paying whatever you're going to end up paying him, is going to be pretty on par with anything you're going to get out of any of our kind of rotational or backup guys, in my opinion. The news of Ogunjobi kind of came out with the Quan Alexander news, I remember, at least like around the same time. Quan Alexander is definitely the one that I would prefer.
I was just going to say,
and we've talked about how we feel about the linebacker room. And today we'll talk about how we feel about the defensive line, but
yes,
I'm just not as worried. So I don't really care, but it is noteworthy to talk about, seeing as he did take a visit.
Totally agree. Yeah. That's all the news. Like I said, we'll get into the defensive line. What was that right there?
I just used my burp button.
Oh, nice.
Blake just saw me over emphatically burp.
I thought you were doing like a yawn or something.
No. Like, I just wanted to make you laugh. Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, Teddy, reading the room time, part 4.
Heck yeah.
Before we get to the
look at us,
line,
man.
Crushing through this.
Part 4. I can't believe it went so quick.
Yeah. Other housekeeping note. Just for us, because I know we mentioned it last pod, we didn't get the chance to watch the new Jets YouTube series over the kind of the entire offseason. So we're going to talk about that next week.
Yes, just for sure. We should know the name of that, but I think it's called One Jets Drive.
I think that's the production company.
The other one.
I think that's what they call themselves.
We're bad
egg on
here.
Your face.
We've been busy, and we'll watch that for sure. And I'm sure it's going to be great. Yeah. So that'll be exciting for sure.
It will.
Good to bring that up. Yeah, we'll talk about that next week, and we'll finish up reading the room. We'll talk about the O-line as well.
What I'll say though about it, it seems like they did a very nice job. And even in the trailer, when you see like Rappaport and Shefty and all the guys that are interviewing for it, narrated by Eisen, seems like they knocked it out of the park. So I'm excited to go into it and kind of take a look at how this entire offseason transpired.
Yeah, I was actually I was talking to my dad about it, because I was just telling him I was excited to watch it, and I was like, last year, because I know it's going to be the same thing, and it's like they show you the draft room, which is so exciting, and like they show you the pre-draft process, so it's like, oh my god, like they ranked Zach Wilson like so high, but it is funny, like they're just going to show you the things that make their draft board look correct, which is fine. But it gets the juices flowing pretty good for the season. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's live looks into what they're saying about them. It's not like they're putting on a show or something, so
no, it's a hype tape. It's really, that's what it is. All right. So before we get to defensive line, we are going to go through the tight end room first, a little bit thinner of a group to speak of, whereas we'll get into the nitty gritty with the defensive line. Teddy, this tight end room is so fucking different from last year, and in one of the best ways possible.
Thank God.
They go from undersized and inconsistent and kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not one-sided, but
one-dimensional.
One-dimensional. Thank you, Theodore. That's why you're here.
The thinker.
To a beefy, athletic, do-it-all tight end room. Obviously the two big signings, CJ Uzomah, bring him in from Cincinnati, Tyler Conklin coming in over from Minnesota. Then they go in the 3rd round, they get Jeremy Ruckert. Teddy, will start at the top there. CJ Uzomah, a guy that you've already seen in, what has it been, 2 months now of him doing press conferences and talking about this team. You can already tell he's going to be one of the loudest voices in this locker room, a guy that just recently went on a very important playoff run with the Cincinnati Bengals, albeit a little banged up for it. One of the, I think, stronger signings of this past offseason, when you just look at a guy that, sure, he hasn't been one of the top 3 or 4 tight ends in the league, but consistency, athletic build, kind of fits everything that they're looking for in New York.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, the first thing that kind of screams out is definitely the leadership. And when we first signed him, that was kind of the first thing when you start looking into the player is wow, this is a guy who was vocal, and really a key leader on a team that made it to the Super Bowl last year, which I think is important experience, especially when you look at what the Jets were last year and the lack of experience they had as a team, which was by design, but that is how it was. And I mean, like you said, like it doesn't have like crazy stats, but at the end of the day, he's been pretty consistent. I think 4 years in a row, minus 2 years ago when he only played 2 games, so kind of three seasons over 4 years. He's had a pretty good consistent stretch there. And yeah, I mean, he can do it all. He can run and he can block. He's a big body. He's fast. So definitely really excited, and definitely excited to kind of pair him with, Tyler Conklin, who's another guy who I think kind of fits a lot of those same roles, very just do it all, like you said, solid. And I think they're both just going to complement each other by being able to both be on the field at the same time or interchangeably, as opposed to where you're looking at 1A, 1B.
Yeah. And when you talk about the Jets and what they want to be on offense, it is through the run. It is 2 tight end sets, a ton of misdirection. So having the Conklin and Uzomah are going to be out on the field all the time together. And, for being able to form that extra protection for the running back on the outside is going to be huge for this offense to hum, because it's going to hum through the running game and it's going to set up the passing game. And when you take a look at, Uzomah 6'6", 260, a beef of a man, probably would have easily been the biggest guy last year in the group. And then also can do it, can also double as a good pass catcher. Now, this past season, you take a look at the numbers and, compared to his, the rest of his career, it's all career highs essentially. And you're also thinking at the same time that this is with 3 wide receivers that are getting so many more looks before him. So you take a look and you see, okay, sure, 49 receptions, just under 500 yards, 10 yards a catch, and 5 touchdowns. Fine. But he did that despite, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and
Tyler Boyd.
Tyler Boyd.
Tyler Boyd. Not Taj Boyd, former Jets quarterback.
Yeah. Throwback. So when you take a look at that, and we're not asking, the expectation isn't that he comes in here and he's getting a Travis Kelce workload, but you would assume with a younger receiving core and a younger quarterback who is probably looking down to his tight ends a little bit more than some other guys, especially when you're a young quarterback that struggled a little bit early in his career, you're going to look to your tight ends a little bit more, and you're going to look to them a little bit more when they're actually better than what they had last year. So for Zach Wilson, one of the most helpful guys all offseason brought in is CJ Uzomah, just because of the safety blanketness and what he's going to provide in the run game, in run blocking. So all in all, sure, he's not a world beater and he's not going to be a top 3 tight end this upcoming season, but just consistency and the ability to block and make stuff happen in the passing game, a great signing and a good guy to have at the top of your tight end room.
Yeah, and I mean, I literally think we've talked about it on every episode, but I just like the 12 personnel thing just is so big to me, like it's what the Jets want to run. You look at last year and you have a rookie quarterback and you have a rookie play caller, and you struggle running the main scheme that the staff wants to run, and you think about what that could do to how the offense performed and how they looked. And another thing we talk about a lot is like young quarterbacks, they're going to go to their slot receiver more often because they're closer to him. It's an easier pass to make. And I think that's the same thing with these 2 tight ends. So if you're going to be able to come out in 12 personnel and stack the box and then have 4 wide receivers go out on a route and maybe a 5th with your running back, like that's the versatility that you're going to be able to bring there is insane, and looking at this room, it did get me thinking just about, how does it kind of compare to other like 2 tight end, like other tight end rooms, like 2 deep, in the league. And so I went through, and there's some, guys like Mark Andrews with the Ravens, Travis Kelce, like obviously they kind of transcend that argument because they make up for whatever that number 2 guy lacks. But when you look at the 2 guys together, their backups aren't really anything crazy. A few teams that I went through every team, a few teams that kind of stuck out to me. I mean, the 49ers have Kittle and Tyler Croft, former Jet. I just wanted to throw that out there. But Tyler Croft, I kind of hate him now after last year. I don't know about anyone else. Bills have Knox and OJ Howard. Browns have David Njoku, Harrison Bryant. Chargers probably might be one of the best with Garrett, or is it Garrett Everett? That's right?
Gerald Everett.
Gerald Everett and Donald Parham. Then there's the Pats with Jonnu Henry and
Jonnu
Hunter
Smith
Henry and Jonnu Smith. Here we go. And then last one I wanted to mention is the Saints with Adam Troutman and Taysom Hill. Any reaction?
I like what
there?
you did there. Thanks, Ted.
Yeah.
For those not understanding Teddy's inside joke, he thought that Taysom Hill was the next Michael Vick.
Taysom Hill is a goat. But yeah, maybe I was wrong about the quarterback thing. But I mean, looking at that list, like the Bills with Dawson Knox and OJ Howard, the Chargers with Everett and Parham, and the Pats like are really the only guys I would think could be comparable. So I think you can't understate where this room is at, because I do think these are two guys who are going to be able to contribute like heavily.
No, it's a really good point. And you're, going through that list, it's like, yeah, where are the great two tight end sets? And you think the last, maybe not the last, but the most notable is obviously Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. And those two were both transcendent talents. And who do you have in the league right now that is, am I forgetting somebody? It almost feels like there's either one featured tight end or two that are
right. I mean, you think about the best tight ends in the league, like you have Travis Kelce, you have Mark Andrews, who I don't have their backups right now, but I know they're kind of not anything. I think it's special. Like
Blake Bell in Kansas City. But I think the point to that is almost, it's a tight end gets paid so much now that it's almost nearly impossible to have great two tight end sets.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, then you even look at like the Falcons with Pitts, but I think their backup is Anthony Firkser, who's not a slouch, but he's a backup,
Yeah.
So we have a guy in Tyler Conklin as our technically number 2 guy, who for the Vikings last year, had almost 600 yards, 61 receptions, was targeted 87 times. And I mean, that was his first kind of big year. That was his 4th year in the league. And I do just want to kind of note that like tight ends take a while to kind of get their feet wet.
So long.
4 or 5 years is what the classic tight end does. So these are two guys. I mean, Uzomah's a little bit older, but these are two guys who are kind of working into their primes. Like Tyler Conklin especially is entering his prime, and Uzomah's probably in the back half of it, but still, I mean, these are two guys who are ready. They know what they're doing. They've established themselves in the league, which is something that can't be overstated. You look at kind of where the Jets' big holes has been since in this 10-year playoff drought, 11-year playoff drought, and it seems like it's always been edge rusher, cornerbacks and tight ends. And I feel like we finally, these are two established guys where we're not hoping, I hope that they can be good. We know they're going to be good.
Right. Yeah, it's funny when you look at the room as a whole, and we can kind of bring Rucker into the conversation now. It's almost like they've got guys at every different phase of the tight end career. Yep. You've got Uzomah, and he's not been this world beater as I mentioned, but he's in his later stages of his prime. He's been around for a bit. Great season last year, and then you've got, I guess, Conklin is the like, what could this potentially be? Because you're right, he is right around that time where this is where the breakout for a tight end happens. And sure, there are guys that hit the ground running in their rookie seasons or by year 2, but for most tight ends, it does take a few years to adjust to the sizing, to get bigger physically yourself, get comfortable running through an NFL field, which is, got different dimensions than the college game. So he's the guy that it's like, you could almost see him just really climb up there. And then Rucker, who's right at the beginning, and he, despite being a 3rd round pick, is going to come in here with really no expectations to do much at all, because not only is he more of a different type of tight end, he's going to be very receiving heavy, and with the Jets and their desire to be running the football, that he's not going to be out on the field a ton, especially with 2 guys above him. But you take a look at him and you say, these are 2 great guys to really learn from, adjust to the pro level. If he's ready sooner than expected, fantastic. You have a great 3 deep tight end room. But at the very least, he's going to be some guy that can kind of come in a pinch and provide a lot of upside in the passing game.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at Rucker, I think it kind of ties the whole room together, and you kind of did hit it with the hitting every step of the of kind of like the tight end lifespan, and we kind of have a guy in every stage of it, but also, we're playing with house money with him. Like if he doesn't come onto the scene in year 1 or year 2, he's got 2 established, experienced guys who he's going to learn from, and that's how you build a culture. That's how you get rolling, where maybe we have Uzomah and Conklin for the next 4 to 5 years, and then we have Ruckert still hanging around, or like these are, I don't know. It's a room I'm excited for. And now in terms of the grade, I want your opinion here, because I do like,
I just changed mine.
I see that. Raise it up a bit. I want to give them an A. And the reason I want to give them an A is because I feel like they've done the best they could to build the room, like sure, they didn't luck out or, get that top tier Travis Kelce type player, Kyle Pitts type player, where it's like, oh, you have a guy who's elite and is one of the best of the positions. But when you look at kind of the list of tight end free agents this year, like switch out OJ Howard's name for either of Conklin or Uzomah. Are you more confident, in any of them? Not really. I mean, obviously Dalton Schultz was the guy, but he ended up re-signing. And so to me, it just seems like it's so solid that I want to give it an A. The only reason I would go down to a B plus is because when you look at a room like Kansas City's, you would say, oh, well, that's an A because they have Travis Kelce. Or you look at a room like the Falcons, you'd say, oh, well, that's an A because they have Kyle Pitts. But, maybe that's more of an A plus. I'm going to go ahead and give them an A because I think this is just one of those rooms. It's only 3 deep, it's not the hardest room to fill out, but they did it, and it's been a lacking thing for the Jets. So A is where I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument, look, they built this tight end room the way that they want a tight end room for this type of offense to be. So yeah, hopefully you draft a guy that's Travis Kelce, or you draft a guy like George Kittle or Kyle Pitts or Darren Waller. But we mentioned those 4 names because there's really no other outside of Mark Andrews guys below that. TJ Hawkinson, there's a little bit more now. There's more better tight ends, I'd say.
Yeah, there is. And those are all good guys,
man,
but
you get into Hawkinson and there's a tier right after.
Yeah. But I do think that, they're Uzomah and Conklin are both in that kind of like 12 to 20 range, maybe even a little bit higher. And they're just going to be consistent, and they're able to be out there for every play. You don't have to worry about, oh, we got a running back guy, or we got a running down guy, we got a passing down guy.
I'm not gonna bash the A. I'm gonna go with a B plus for the room, just because, like you said, there's no like elite talent here, and we are kind of just projecting a little bit of what Conklin and Uzomah can be. I would feel a little bit more confident in Uzomah just because I think he's just a little bit more polished of a player, where Conklin dealt with injuries before? I'm taking a look back here. No, he's been pretty reliable, just didn't really start until this past year. So no real injury history with him. So that's good.
Had Irv Smith to deal with.
Yep. Yeah. So, I'm going to go B plus. I had it as a B originally, but as you kind of got talking into, when you went through the list of the 2 tight end sets, and you're like, okay, yeah, there's who has a stronger 1 and 2, not just 1 by itself, like Kelce and all those greats, but like when you put the 2 next to each other, who really stands out? There's not a ton that stand out more than that. So it's definitely, as far as the room goes, we're reading the entire room here. One of the better tight end rooms maybe in football, which is kind of crazy considering how piss poor they were a year ago.
I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah. Well, hey,
remember when we thought Dustin Keller was going to be the GOAT?
My boy was Chris Herndon. I was a big Chris Herndon boy.
I know. He had that 1 year and then never did anything ever again except hurt me.
Yeah, I had a friend at JMU. He grew up in Herndon, Virginia, and they
That's
were always
funny.
called Herndon boys in
The
high school.
Herndon
So
boys.
it's like Chris Herndon, he's a Herndon boy. But all right, Teddy goes with the A. I go with the B plus. One of our higher grades that we've given out, definitely. But Teddy, let's flip over to the longer conversation of the day, the defensive line. And
Yes.
and the way to
The
break this up, I kind of just went top 4 projected starters. I guess in a passing situation is the way I had this run out, because it's going to be different, especially to start out the season. I would think so. But when I look at how I kind of ordered it out, I did the front 4 and then depth behind that. Do you want to go edge and interior defensive lineman? What sounds best to you? Do you like the way we've got it?
No, I like the way you got it. I mean, the way Blake put this with the passing down, I guess, is on
Yeah.
the edge. You got Carl Lawson and Jermaine Johnson. And then with the interior, you have John Franklin Myers and Quinnen Williams. I think maybe Jermaine Johnson is the one like question mark there, but definitely in passing downs, I think that's where you're going to see him right off the
Yeah,
gate.
definitely.
Switching it over to running downs. I mean, what do you think? Maybe Franklin Myers plays a little more edge on running
Oh
downs.
yeah.
Bring in Solomon Thomas. Bring in a guy like Jacob Martin. Bring in maybe Sheldon Rankins. Guys like that.
To me, a running down scenario is Carl Lawson, Quinnen Williams on the inside, alongside Sheldon Rankins, and then John Franklin Myers on the opposite edge.
Yeah. So I
He was
think
great
that's
stopping the run last year on
oh
the
yeah.
outside. So
And I
I
think at least
yeah,
to start the season, Rankins is probably the depth piece with the most just like established credibility.
consistency. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think especially after the year where he did pretty well last year, I think he'll get that nod. But yeah, so I guess let's just stick with kind of those 4 to 5 guys.
Yeah. Burgers and fries.
I mean, what sticks out to you? Where do you want to start, my man?
I mean, I talked about it a little bit earlier with the offensive line. It's so interesting because so many teams now are built on the star edge rusher, and the rest of the guys that fill in the line, or the starred left tackle and the rest of the guys fill in the line. There is no real guy there. And the expectation is that Carl Lawson, stepping into this upcoming season, hopefully for the first time in a Jets uniform, as he unfortunately was injured before the season started last year, that he is that guy. And to me, I like Carl Lawson as a player. He has extremely outperformed his, projection coming out of college as a 4th round draft pick. Production was always consistent. It was always high. Everybody just looks at sack numbers, and that's such a misleading way to look at things. And you would look at those and you'd say, okay, they're not great at all. His most recent season, 5.5, the year before that, 5, the year before that, 1 is really his only high sack season was his rookie year in 2017, where he had 8.5. But you take a look at quarterback hits, you take a look at pressures. He's a consistent guy. I think personally, and I could be wrong when it's all said and done, and I hope I am for the sake of the Jets, but I just don't look at him as like this premier pass rusher that is going to be talked about among, okay, who are the best edge rushers on a good defense in the NFL. I think this defensive line, as we get into all of them, is a very consistent and deep group, which is what they wanted to build. And with the rotations they're going to go through, it's exactly what you want. But I don't know. He got paid. He got hurt. So he spent this entire past year just being like, oh, don't forget, we've got Carl Lawson back. But in my head, I say I think he's going to be a very good player, but I don't know if he's going to be like the guy on the defensive line. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that's
thoughts?
interesting. And it's I guess that's kind of like the fear. And I mean, maybe not the fear. Like if he's not a world beater, then it's not the end of the world if some of these other guys can step up. I do agree. I mean, he's not like in the Bosa's of the world or the kind of tier 1 edge rushers, but I do think he at least has the ability to be right there. Obviously the sack production was always lacking, but the one thing, and obviously when you're a Jets fan, you're taking the optimistic viewpoint. But it's one of the reasons that Saleh, wanted him so bad. And it was the win rate, the percentage of how many times are you beating your guy one-on-one. And he led the league in that 2 years ago. I do definitely think, as we've struggled with this defensive line and this lack of an edge presence over the last few years, when you're watching the game, there's plenty of times you see one guy kind of make a break or like get around their guy and win. And, maybe they could make a play on the quarterback, but then because of the lack of any other pressure, the quarterback's kind of just able to move away and get away from that. So I think, hoping everyone can stay healthy, what now we're able to do, Quinnen Williams is number 3 overall pick. And then you have a guy like Carl Lawson, who's hopefully kind of taking that step to be a premier player. And then you have John Franklin Myers, who's going to be playing his natural position inside, and then another first round pick in Jermaine Johnson. I just kind of see this as a room where, I see this as a room where they're all going to complement each other. And one guy getting a win maybe leads to another guy getting a sack. And I think just if this group can stay healthy, and especially these top 5 or 6 guys, I think it's going to be one that's going to be able to wreak havoc. And it goes to your point of just like, even if there's not maybe one premier guy, there's a slew of guys who can all make plays and get to the quarterback. So now finally, as opposed to like, we're really, really thin and we don't have guys who can get off the edge. Now it seems like, pass rushing off the edge is one of the stronger suits of a lot of our players on the D line. So I just think their ability to I think Lawson and Williams and Quinnen Williams are the 2 guys to really look at. Their ability to kind of play off at each other, hopefully can kind of launch them both into where we want to see them. Quinnen being a top 5 pick, you want to see him be one of the most dominant guys. And it's hard when you're not playing on a great defense or a great D line, but now no more excuses. And that kind of goes with Carl Lawson. Obviously he was hurt last year, but same thing. And then I think Franklin Myers moving in to inside, especially for passing downs, is just it's going to be huge, and he's earned all the recognition and credit that he's gotten over the past couple of years, because he really has kind of been that rock, and stepped up and played out of position and things like that, So yeah, I'm excited for these guys. I think they can all complement each other well, and hopefully someone will have a big year.
Right. And that's not me to say, like, I can say that I think that the Carl Lawson hype has become too much, but I'm not saying that doesn't mean this won't be a really good defensive line. Just because, and I know we won't spend a ton of time going into them, but, behind him, having a guy like Bryce Huff, Jacob Martin, who's one of my favorite additions to this team. You got the 4th round pick, Michael Clemens. Like, there are guys, layers to this defensive line that it's going to be good. I just don't think, I think the injury mixed in with the hype that's been building around the team this offseason has turned Carl Lawson into maybe not too overhyped, but hyped enough where I would more just say, like, it's going to be a good defensive line throughout. I don't think there's going to be a star player on it.
I think you're telling us to proceed with caution,
Yeah, I would. Yeah, if he's still finishing the season with 5.5 sacks, I feel like people will be like, well, we were building up into this huge thing with him. But
yeah, I mean, if he gets 5.5 sacks, I'll be amped personally.
Yeah.
After his 0 sack year,
after
2 years
0
ago.
that he wasn't playing.
I just kind of want to go through these depth guys and kind of give just 2-second thoughts, I guess. Maybe not for all of them, but like Bryce Huff is a guy who, it's kind of his year to either show it or not. He's kind of been this he's got potential, always got potential. He's kind of flashed when he's been able to get out there. Again, this is a situation where we're no longer kind of hoping Bryce Huff can turn into our starter and rely on him, because he does have a couple guys above him, but hopefully he can just show earn his way on the field. Hopefully he can play his way into a scenario where it's not really an option to take him out. Solomon Thomas, it's been 2 years now. We've had Salah as the coach. You're going into his 2nd year. I just have this thing in my mind. Anyone who comes from the 49ers, I just think is going to be good. I think Salah is going to be able to work with them. Why else would he bring them in? So hopefully he can be a good addition. Other guys, I guess Michael Clemens is the 4th round rookie pick. He's just a guy I'm really intrigued to see.
Scared by him. I'm scared by him. He scares me.
In terms of his play or just him?
Him. He's terrifying. He's massive,
Yeah,
and he
he's a
talked about
manly
just
man.
bashing people's heads in.
Yeah. And I mean, he's been very divisive in kind of the analysis I've seen of him, and people who think he is kind of lacking, and then people who think he's kind of underrated. So
Yeah.
so for me, I don't always feel the need to stake my claim in these guys, but I'm just excited to see where does this guy end up falling, and is he going to be a guy who's going to get reps and affect the game, or is he just going to kind of be another bench player? Because at the end of the day, some of these guys are going to have to get cut. They got a lot of D linemen on their team right now. I think they might have like 21. So
Yeah.
maybe that math's not right. Maybe 17.
To me, it's going to end up around 10. I think you're going to be able to have your front four. You're going to have a second four behind them. And then you're either going to keep 2 extra edge guys. You're going to do 1 edge and 1 guy that's kind of like a tweener. Solomon Thomas is a guy that's a tweener. He was drafted. I think he was drafted as an edge, then moved inside, went to Vegas this past year and had kind of an okay season. But now, like you said, he is going back to a defense he's a little bit more familiar with. So it's like, okay, maybe they saw the work he put in on the interior in Las Vegas, and they're like, okay, we can kind of work with this a little bit. So maybe his role is a little bit different than what it was in San Francisco. But like you said, a guy that's been with the coaching staff, a former, just like Quinnen Williams, 3rd overall pick, a guy that, or was he number 2? No, 2 was Mitch Trubisky. 3 was Solomon Thomas. Yeah. So Solomon Thomas is a guy that you could be excited for as a really solid depth piece. Like you said, knows the defense. Jacob Martin, Sheldon Rankins had a solid season, like we said. Vinny Curry, a guy that's been around. I still have questions, though, if you don't mind us going back a little bit. I still have questions to discuss with the top 3 outside, because I think we spent a lot of time on Carl Quinnen. Big season coming up for him, and they've picked up the 5th-year option, but which is to no surprise. So he's going to be around past this season. But I think one of the funniest things that we always have talked about the Jets, whether it's on the podcast or off the podcast, is just his time spent on the field last year, which was right around half the plays. I believe the official number was 51.56% of snaps.
I think you nailed it.
He did well.
That's another thing we've brought up on most of our podcasts
is the splits. Exactly. So he's done well against the pass. He struggled a little bit against the run this past year. In terms of like what, because like you said, it's not just the fact that Carl Lawson is coming back. It's like, this is the first time all these pieces get to work together with other good parts. And for Quinnen Williams, and we talked about how the defensive line didn't help the linebackers last year. It's like the defensive line didn't help each other at all. And so now you've got a guy next to him. So when you look at Quinnen, what is that next step for him? Is it being on the field more often? Is it more production while he is out there? Like, how would you kind of grade a growing season for Quinnen Williams?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Quinnen is he has been like a decent player. It's not like he's been bad. And I apologize for the dog in the background. If you guys are picking that up, I got River.
River's having fun.
And then I got Hannah yelling to try to calm him down, which is nice of her.
I can't hear Hannah. I can just hear River.
Okay. So okay. Well, I'll try to fight through it, but
we're fine.
I burped again.
We're thing with Quinnen, I might say we might have to cut out the beers. We burp a lot on this show.
I know. I wasn't even going to have one too, but like I said, it's the only good time to relax.
Exactly. Anyways, Quinnen.
So yeah, I mean, he really hasn't been that bad. But it's just been like the, lack of production, lack of sack numbers. It's kind of, he seems to be falling into that like Leonard Williams trap, which was, he's a good player. Maybe he's a guy who because of the scheme, we're not asking him to get a lot of sacks and get to the quarterback, and he's more of like a gap filler, whatever. But that's not why you draft a guy 3rd overall. No. And that's not what you hope for one of these top five guys. It's going crazy out there.
Well, I wonder what he's barking at. I wonder what he's trying to say hi to.
I know, I'm not sure. But we'll fight through again.
Yeah, we're almost
basically
there.
I mean, I want to see him, get 60+% of the snaps. I want to see him have 4 to 5+ sacks. He doesn't have to be the guy who's consistently getting to the quarterback in that interior rush, but I want to see him out there a lot more than 52% of the time. And I want to start seeing those sacks. I want to see those impact plays. I want to see, 2 to 3 to 4 plays a game where it's like, oh, that's Quinnen leaving his mark.
Yeah.
You look at what Aaron Donald's able to do as a defensive lineman on his team, and obviously Quinnen Williams isn't going to be Aaron Donald, but you look at what one player is able to do to affect a game when they're just making plays. And I think that Quinnen Williams has that potential to really be impacting games week in and week out. So I think that's what you want to see. You just don't want to go on a 3, 4, 5 game stretch where it's like, man, it seems like Quinnen Williams is doing nothing. And I think that's really where the evaluation is going to come in of how does he impact a game as opposed to just like his play-by-play play.
Play-by-play
that
play.
Made sense.
I like
right.
that. Yeah.
But because he's going to be doing the right things and he's shown he's a good player, but we just need to see more of those impact plays.
Yeah, this is the year where it's, to me, and there's a few other guys on the team that are like this. It's like you were invested in as a top pick, and we cut you some slack because the team was so bad. Now that the team and your counterparts on the defensive line are at par with what an NFL team should be, now we kind of want to see you take that next step.
Yep.
So to me, he's one of the guys, and maybe we can do a draft later on in this podcast where we're like, guys who have the most pressure on them this year. Quinnen Williams, not necessarily pressure, but there should be a lot of expectations around him this year.
Yeah, I don't hate you calling it pressure at all, because I do think that's what's there for him.
When you're that, like you said, you're that high of a pick, you're expected to be a game changer.
His 4th year, right? I mean, it's his contract year. And, of course, it's like, I bet you we do see him have a big year and then we'll sign him. And if it's anything like the old Jets, then he'll fall back. but hopefully, these are these things that we're hoping are going to break the right way instead of the wrong way for once. But yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, this year is huge for him.
Yep. Opposite him, John Franklin Myers. I call him the chess piece that holds this line together. He is just a guy that has been good on the outside against the run, strong on the inside against the pass. He makes life so much easier for a defensive coordinator or for a defensive line coach, because like, not only does he have a high motor and he can be out there a lot, but he's going to consistently provide you value or slide in when needed. Say if an interior guy goes down or an edge rusher goes down, he is a guy that consistently is going to be there to fill some sort of void for the defensive line. And he got paid, this past offseason. So shout out to him, deservingly so. And I think when you're going to take a look, to me, at the value of that contract a year or two from now and go, wow, this guy provided so much on our defensive line. And I think was it 3 years, 27 million, or I'm trying to think what it was. It's somewhere in that 9 to 10 million range, but I think the value that he's adding is going to be insane. I want to pull up what he did last year. And even a guy like him, it's so
4-year, 55,000 or 55 million year contract.
Okay. And then this upcoming season though, so they added on 3 after, so it's whatever is missing.
Oh, okay. Okay. This upcoming season, he's making 1.5 but then he's making, 11 next year, 13 the next year, 14 the next year.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's a little bit more than I thought. I thought it was in 9 to 10, but no, 11 through 14 still.
Well, I think that his bonus, he got a $10 million roster bonus.
Gotcha.
So he's making almost 13 million this year.
Well, it's funny when you take a look at his snap count, it was only at 60%, which is just so funny when you think of how impactful he was along the defensive line. But I guess being able to do both of those positions, I would almost expect it to be up a little bit more, just because he's got other guys opposite on both those positions that can fill the void when he's kind of flipping in between. So, to me, his usage, we talked about it. To me, it's the run as an edge rusher, on running plays, moving inside, and really having a quick advantage against interior offensive linemen. He's a guy that, when you talk about the impact having better players around you is going to have, I think he's going to be the guy that steps up the most, where you're like, holy fuck, this guy's doing all of this, because now he's got, hopefully a stronger play from Quinnen next to him on the inside, or he's got guys on the edge that are forcing the interior offensive lineman to put attention on Jermaine and Carl Lawson, and he's going to be able to break right through the middle. So in terms of like who is, to me, trending upward along this defensive line, I think he's the guy, just because he's got the least name value of the four. He's a guy I look at that's like, he could sneaky be one of the when you look at production and the numbers, one of the higher guys, just because his life is going to be so much easier next year than it had been in 2021.
Yeah. I mean, best D lineman we had last year, and he was, playing out of position as most of the season. So yeah. I'm excited to see him be able to have that flexibility to go inside more often, just like you, and play off of these other guys.
Yeah. And then the last guy, and we've talked about him a bunch before because he was frequently talked about heading into the draft, Jermaine Johnson, the third first rounder for him out of Florida State, a guy that fell down the board, former Georgia Bulldog as well too. We've talked about, it's funny that from the days of like, oh, it's Kayvon Thibodeau, like that's the guy we want. Now we end up with JJ down at 26 is where it ended up being. Roller coaster of how we got here, but the Jets liked, what they could build off of him. I don't believe he's going to add much support early on in his career in the run game, but that's why you've got a guy like John Franklin Myers out there, where you can kind of help Jermaine transition into the pros. So just in terms of rookie expectations for him, or what you think, what do you make of Jermaine Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of expectations, the only real way I'm going to be like tremendously disappointed is if he's just not even out there a lot, if it ends up being, Bryce Huff, who, I mean, if Bryce Huff looks outstanding, it is what it is.
Sure.
But if it ends up being an average Bryce Huff, or you see Vinny Curry out there a lot, you see kind of some of these other guys, I think that'll be disappointing. But I definitely, I really don't like, I don't need him to like be this dominant force this year. Obviously that's what you want to see. You want to see flashes, and you want to see that he was worth that first round pick. But at the same time, we've talked about all these other guys and how they're going to complement each other. And I think that Jermaine Johnson, even as a starter, is put in this position where he's going to get the benefit of the doubt, or like, I guess what I'm trying to say is he's going to have other guys who are helping him to be good, perhaps cover up mistakes, perhaps, help him get a couple sacks that maybe he wouldn't have otherwise gotten. So I mean, expectations, I want to see him out there. I want to see him playing well. I want to see him making plays, but I don't need to see him be this dominating force in order for me to say, hey, he had a pretty good year, because I think he's just in a stage where again, we don't have to rely on him to just automatically become the best player on the team, because we've built other guys around there who we can hopefully say, okay, these guys can be the best player for a while, and then you'll get your turn in a year or two.
Seeing him out there tells you that the coaching staff trusts him. And I think that's the biggest thing when you look at a guy that, like I said, not the best in his approach to the run game. In the pass game, it's more physical prowess than finesse. And that's going to change, when you get to the pros and you're facing NFL left tackles, as opposed to, and don't get me wrong, the ACC is not garbage, but I would also say there weren't a ton of great tackle prospects or offensive linemen coming out of there this past season. So when you take a look and you say, okay, yeah, he was really just bullying guys, it's not going to be as impactful. But if you see him out there, that's telling you that the coaching staff is working on building those things up, and they're entrusting him the opportunity over some of those guys, like you said, a Bryce Huff or a Jacob Martin or a Vinny Curry. So I'm with you. To me, it's not what the numbers look like at the end of the year. It's the snap percentage, and hopefully it's being impactful, because like you said, he should be the fourth best starter on the defensive line. That's where it should be. And if you want to say that he should be third next to John Franklin Myers, sure, go right ahead, because he was a first round pick. But I think that's more of a long-term projection than right off the bat. So, he's an aggressive guy, violent hands, the bulldozing over tackles. I mean, he overpowers them, but there's not a lot of finesse there. That needs to be worked on. He needs to be better in the run game and attacking run designs. But to me, if he's out on the football field, Robert Saleh and the coaching staff trust him. And it may not be pretty early on, but it will definitely continue to get better as the season goes along.
Yeah, I mean, going through all these players, like the amount of trust I have in the coaching staff, it might be too much. My world will come crumbling down if like we get halfway through the season and it's like, oh, Robert Saleh stinks. Like we got it. Like my world will.
But I mean,
fall.
isn't that their fault? I mean, there has been so much hype built around this team.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, no, for sure. But
They
I
built
still
so
just
much
think
of this up themselves.
there's a difference. I still just think like there's a difference between obviously the results are what matters, and the results are what gets you, further opportunity and renown and credibility and all those things. But similar to the way that I think like Joe Douglas at the end of the day, his process is correct. I think that Robert Saleh has those same things, where the way he views football and the way he approaches coaching, I think a lot of that is just kind of the right way to do it. Now, granted, again, if we come out here and are horrible again this year, they're going to look at the coach and they're going to say, well, is this the right thing? Yeah. But I don't really see it happening in like a terrible world ending type of way where we're going to be 1-15 to end the season,
Yep.
But it's funny to think about like the benefit of the doubt that you give some of these players as opposed to when like Gase was the coach or any of these other guys where it's like, well, they'll probably just stink again,
Right.
That was just a quick little thought I had.
No, of course. No, it's right, because it's for a team that has been so hyped up and then let down and then hyped up and then let down. You're like, are we going to let ourselves buy into all this again? But you at least, I don't know, you have to feel a little bit better about this coaching staff than the ones before it.
Oh yeah.
Grade Teddy for the defensive line.
Yeah, I'm going solid B. I think this room just kind of screams B. It screams solidity. Is that a word? It's just very like, solid. I don't know, solid. That's what I think of. I just think of like, they're not really going to let you down. I think they do have a high ceiling. I think with those 4 top guys, I think they have the ability to become an A for sure. But as of right now, I just think they're a solid group. I think they're not going to kill the Jets. Maybe they don't help them as much as we hope, but we'll wait to see it, but I think they're solid. I think they deserve a B.
Yeah, I'm going to go B as well too, but our reasoning is almost a little bit different. I go a B because I think it is going to be one of the deepest defensive lines in football. Like I said, I don't necessarily buy into the fact that there's an elite pass rusher on this team or someone that's going to be like talked about as one of the best in the league. But from 1 through 10, when you got guys that can do just about everything on this defensive line, and like I said, we've talked about the bench guys like Solomon and Jacob and Curry and Bryce Huff. They don't need to have an elite guy there. If they can consistently just get pressure, like, yes, TJ Watt, having him out there every play is fantastic because he's always going to put pressure on the quarterback. But when you can sprinkle that money around a bunch of different guys and you can legitimately go 10 deep, that's what wears out an offensive line. It's not having the one guy on the left side. That's a nightmare, definitely. But when it's every play and you're bringing in your twos and they're getting pressure, and, Jacob Martin finishes with an 8-sack season as like their 3rd pass rusher. To me, that's where I look at this defensive line. I just go like, if you are always putting pressure on the quarterback, no matter who's out there, that's a win for me. So I'm going to go B because I think it is one of the deepest defensive lines in all of football.
Heck yeah. 1 grade away, Blake.
Look at that. 1 away. We got the offensive line next week. And then I guess, I don't know, do we do a final grade for the team? That could be like the other part. We don't necessarily have to talk about the entire team as a whole, but just be like, this is our report card, final grade for the Jets.
I don't like want to do that because
is that like, something that can come back and make us look bad?
Well, I mean, no, that just is what it is, I guess. But like when you look at the team as a whole and like where the grades are, I think my grade that I'd feel forced to give the team is lower than I want to admit, because I want to just say they're an A.
Right.
So yeah. we'll play around with that idea.
That's fair. We'll figure it out. But yes, we'll be back next week talking offensive line and this Jets series as well too. Hopefully some fun news comes along where we find out that Mekhi Becton is going to be playing football, and George Fant has a contract extension. Everything is happy in the world of the New York Jets. But until then, thank you guys so much for listening again to Chasing 69, a New York Jets podcast at NYJ_Chasing69 on Twitter. Same with the YouTube channel, Teddy at Teddy Huncho, myself at Blake Andrew Pace. Teddy, it's been fun as always. Anything you want to leave the people with before we head on out? You ready to roll? Okay, let's do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week. Peace.